Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. After a couple week break, we're back here. We wanted to do a mailbag podcast. We opened it up to the subscribers at Inside the U to pick the topics we touch on here in this podcast. We'll answer their questions. Some good questions and obviously a lot of excitement here in the off season as we ramp up towards spring football and look ahead to off-season recruiting and of course the 2026 season. Before we dive into things, Gabby, want to highlight sponsors, right? Canes Connection, that of course is Miami's collective. Recruiting season is now ramped up. It's time to turn the page to the 2027 high school recruiting cycle. And Miami's hitting the ground running, as we'll get into here soon in the podcast. But Canes Connection is Miami's collective. They do a big-time job in assisting Miami in that space. So go to canesconnection.com and support those guys any way you can. Also want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino at Musarino Law. If you've been injured in any type of accident, slip and fall, boating accident, car accident, Uber Lyft accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact at 561-960-9870 or visit the website at flinjury.law.
Yeah, guys, and if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in South Florida, you should know Aaron Pascal with Keller Williams, a local, born and raised, huge Miami Hurricanes fan, knows South Florida, all three counties inside and out. He can get you a free home value report or just a quick market update. Hit up my guy Aaron at 305-497-5773 or visit his website, apascal.kw.com.
All right, so go support those sponsors. They help us do what we do here on this podcast. All right, Gabby, before we fully open the mailbag, there's some news I think we should touch on. Also, preview an upcoming recruiting day, maybe that's going to happen on the 5th of March. But first, let's talk about the coaching news with the program. Miami's hired two new coaches, or has officially hired one, and is in the process of hiring another. Let's start with the most recent name, and that is the new tight ends coach, Mike Vitti. He's kind of a cool hire with his background, interesting guy. He arrives at Miami after serving as a longtime coach at Army, the Army Academy. He's kind of an Army legend, 2008 West Point graduate. Again, coached at Army for 10 seasons. He played fullback there for 4 seasons. He was the associate head coach and offensive line coach at Army. He will be coaching tight ends at the University of Miami. Served as a platoon leader in Afghanistan and earned a Bronze Star and Combat Action Badge. Retired from the military as a captain. So interesting hire. Gabby, how'd this one hit you when you found out he was going to be the guy?
Yeah, this was a cool one. The background is awesome. And look, people are like, he's not a tight ends coach, right? He's never like coached the tight ends. But if you remember, Cody Woodall, who was Miami's tight ends coach, was an offensive line guy. He played offensive line, and he was an offensive line analyst at Oregon before he kind of transitioned into working with tight ends too. So we know the line of scrimmage is a top priority, and I think that Mike Vitti checks off all the boxes as far as just making sure that there is physicality at the line of scrimmage. And then just you kind of saw a lot of the response on social media, David. I mean, and anyone listening to this, there's a lot of people who have a lot of really, really good things to say about Mike Vitti. He is a highly, highly respected member of that Army coaching staff. He coached an offensive line in 2024 that won the Joe Moore Award, which is given to the nation's top offensive line. And that Army offensive line was the first group of 6 or military or service academy to ever win that award. So that is a big deal. He coached a first team All-American guard on that offensive line. So one thing Army does is run the football. They ran for over 4,200 yards that year. And again, we know Miami wants to be physical and they want to have that presence. And that's their identity. That's their mentality. this hire to me is just to me it's a big time hire, just pulling out an associate head coach from Army and then considering the
Yeah.
background and everything that kind of comes along with it. It makes a lot of sense as far as just like culture wise, identity wise, and then I think it's also a testament to Miami and where they're at as a program because I think you have to be pretty certain about making this type of move to step away from
Yeah.
your branch, right? Like he is an Army guy through and through. Stepping away from that and doing something else, I think it had to have been a pretty enticing opportunity, and I think Mike Vitti sees a great opportunity here at Miami. So I think it's an awesome hire. I think it's really cool. I think his background is extremely unique, and I'm sure that what he brings both culturally and then just on the field is it's just going to work.
Yeah, I think in some small ways too, it speaks to the culture that Mario Cristobal has
Right.
going now at
Right.
Miami because it's got to be buttoned up for a guy like a Mike Vitti to come to Miami. And yeah, going back to the point about him not coaching tight ends before, and yeah, I think that's a fair thing. And there's going to be some learning curve there, coaching tight ends. But you mentioned Cody Woodhill. I would also mention like Mario Cristobal himself, right? He coached tight ends before he kind of transitioned to being a offensive line coach when he was
Hmm.
working his way up. So
Yep.
he's a guy that believes that you can make that type of transition, right?
Right.
So I think it's a big time hire. And look, he's a guy I think too, like, accountability is a huge deal in college football in general. He is a coach that is going to set a standard of accountability. Not that other coaches didn't, but that's important in this current. To me, Gabby, the two most important factors in winning consistently in college football nowadays, get the players. So you got to have the talent, right? You got to have the roster. That kind of goes without saying. And then you got to have the culture, the coaches, the people in charge that will hold that talent accountable. And so I think Mike Vitti is a guy that, from a profile standpoint, should be able to help keep that culture going. The other guy, the other coach to talk about here that's new at Miami, he is officially hired. That is Fabian Upshaw, the new running backs coach. Definitely an under the radar type of hire. His background's interesting as well. He was a quarterback at Georgia Southern. He was then a graduate assistant at Tulane in 2018, 2019, coached quarterbacks at Savannah State in 2020, Georgia Southern running backs coach then in 2021, went to be an offensive analyst with the quarterbacks at Tulane in 2022, and then he went on and kind of became a quality control type of coach at the NFL level. But Gabby, this is an interesting one too. What
Yeah.
have you learned about Coach Upshaw and how he fits in at Miami now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, right? Another one where the background is again former quarterback, and but the thing is he's worked with NFL running backs now for 3 years, so I think that matters probably more than the position he played in college. Like I
Yeah,
don't think that there's like a direct correlation that like there's some guys that played the position a position well and coached the position well. There are other guys that didn't or whatever the case is. So I
and
don't
he
think that
ran an
that's
option offense in
right.
college, so he
Exactly.
was running a lot.
So, and then just being in the league and just being with the Broncos and in that Sean Payton system and all that stuff, I think it's good. That's good context. That's good work. He worked with some good running backs too. I mean, you consider R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, um, a couple of those other guys in Denver that are slipping my mind right now, but I had him written in the story from when he was hired. But he's a guy that comes with NFL experience, and I think that there's a ton of value into that. And look, again, there might be a learning curve with recruiting, and whatever that case is. Like this is obviously a big time college job, and he hasn't necessarily been in a role like this, but he's young. He signed with FIU out of high school, so he played. He went to go play for Mario Cristobal as a 2020 as a 2012 signee. I think that was Mario Cristobal's last season at FIU, and
Hmm.
so he actually so there's a long-standing relationship there that I think there's obviously some trust, or there's whatever the case is. And again, a little off the cuff, not definitely not a name that we predicted, but
Yeah.
I think it's one of those situations you just kind of let's let it play out and see how it goes, and kind of trust that they make good hires. They've made good hires. Like Matt Merritt when he came, he was a He had just kind of really got an on-field opportunity at USF, I think 2 years before with Alex Golesh's staff. Before that, he was an off-field guy at Tennessee, at Ohio State, at I think a few other places. And I think Fabian Upshaw, from what I've heard, is kind of cut from that same cloth as far as just like a rising up-and-comer, which I think matters at the running back position. You need to be able to recruit, connect, and ultimately, coach the good team. I mean, this is a good room,
Yeah,
a good
manage
group
it.
of guys that he has, manage it, and again, I think the players and all that stuff. I mean, the rest of it comes with time and the effort of recruiting and all that stuff. So I'm optimistic about that one too, and people seem to feel good about it.
So one position coach left to officially hire. The cornerbacks coach has to be replaced with Zach Etheridge moving on to the NFL level. So we'll see how that plays out. So one more coach, and spring football still a couple weeks away. So, technically Miami has time to sort that out, however they want to sort it out. Um, Last thing before we open the mailbag, Gabby, 305 Day
Yep.
is going to be happening on March 5th. It's an opportunity now with recruits able to visit college campuses. It's an opportunity for Miami to get FaceTime with some of their big time targets here for this 2027 cycle. Set the table here on the podcast, as to what's expected. We'll see. You'll be covering it in terms of like who actually shows up and how it goes, etc. But what's expected from this 305 day?
Yeah, Miami in January, when programs are typically doing this, played into mid-January and then basically used the rest of the month to hit the road in recruiting. They had like a little mini junior day on the 31st, the last day of the month, and there was a basketball game on campus, but nothing super big and formal. This is really Miami's first big junior day of the class of 2027 recruiting cycle. And so Miami's definitely making it pretty big. There's going to be a lot of like premium level talent that's going to be in quarterbacks, all that stuff. Starts at the top with Nick Lanier, the local wide receiver, top 20 player nationally for us at 24/7 Sports, a top local target for the Hurricanes. He's someone that Miami feels like they just have to have in this cycle. So I think that this will be a good next step in that process. He spent plenty of time around the program, but this will be another exposure as he gets closer and closer towards making a decision. And Miami's in a very, very favorable spot there. Myson Johnson Cook is an interesting out of state running back. He's a big 6'2", 220-pound type back. And
Yeah.
from what I saw, David, he ripped off a back-to-back 4.44s in the 40 up in Indianapolis during the opening up there that Andrew Ivins was at, and that's extremely impressive. That combination of size and speed, we saw how dangerous that could be when we saw kind of Mark Fletcher with some juice,
Yeah.
in the college football playoff run. To me, David, I don't know if you've been
They're
able to watch
similar.
Myson Johnson. Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like they're
they
similar,
are.
just structured size, all that stuff. So Myson Johnson Cook gives me a little bit of Mark Fletcher vibe. So we'll see where that ultimately plays out. Caden Henderson is a top linebacker out of the Tampa area. He's probably Miami's top linebacker target this cycle. Definitely the
He's
top guy
good.
in the Sunshine State. And then there's going to be a couple of, more local guys. Zayden Gamble, the blue chip safety out of St. Thomas Aquinas. Andre Hippolyte, the under the radar, fast rising safety out of North Miami Beach. Sherrard Gordine, the nickel corner out of MacArthur in Hollywood. He's, we have him crystal ball to Miami. I think that he's going to be eventually someone that ends up in this class, and Miami's really excited about him. A couple quarterbacks, Davin Davidson, the 6'6" towering signal caller out of Sarasota. Cardinal Mooney, he's going to be in attendance. That's one of Miami's top quarterback targets. Neiman Lawrence is another one is a 2028 quarterback, local guy out of Plantation American Heritage that Miami's excited about. Another running back, Elijah Kimball, out of the Buffalo area, is someone that Miami has been high on throughout this process, that they're eager to kind of get on campus. And then, again, a couple other just local guys. Jamar Thompson, the big defensive tackle out of West Boca. Steve Bentley, Kelmaju Yondui, big, interesting four-sport athlete out of the UK who's playing his high school football at Coral Gables High School. Pretty interesting body type that I'm, intrigued by. I'm curious what the feedback's going to be on him on Thursday. And then a couple more St. Thomas Aquinas guys, Jaden Carey, a cornerback, and Julius Jones, the blue chip wide receiver, to go along with a couple notable 2028 guys like Amir Sears, who's the
Hmm.
all all country, number one quarterback in the country. In that 2028 class out of Miami Columbus, and he's a top name, and he's considering reclassifying. So I think that's one to
Right.
track as if it's a 2027 recruit, or potentially as if it's a 2027 recruit. And he's as good as it gets,
Yeah.
truthfully. As honestly, in my time doing this, he's true. I don't know, David. I don't know if you've been able to see him yet, but he's in that like upper echelon tier of guys that I've seen in my time doing this, where it's just like I don't have to like again. You could pull anyone off the street and
Yeah.
watch this kid do
No
something,
brainer.
and they're gonna just total like the ultimate no brainer. Not I don't want to put him in that crazy Jeremiah Smith category, but similar of just like it's obvious that this kid is just so different.
Yeah.
So that's a big time guy, regardless of whether he when he enrolls in college.
Yeah. So Gabby will be all over it on Thursday as the updates roll in, etc. So go subscribe insidetheu.com. Things are getting cranked up, and again, this program's rolling, so it's a fun time to subscribe. Go support us. Get some great coverage insidetheu.com. All right, let's open up the mailbag, Gabby. First question comes from Kanggang06, who asks, have we heard anything on workouts and player-led sessions to this point, on standouts across position groups? What has people in the program buzzing right now? How does it compare to the feeling at this point compared to previous years? I'll give you the floor first if you want to go first. Anything you've heard, Buzzy?
Yeah, a ton. I wrote something on the site this week, so if you're subscribed to Inside the U, I would encourage you to check that out. If you're not, worth it because we know we have a ton of off-season buzz and scoop on the site right now. There's a lot going on. Obviously these guys are just kind of getting into the thick of like off-season workouts. I think they're in that fourth quarter program, I guess is what they call it,
Yep.
David. And there's a lot of buzz, between freshmen guys that they're coming in, and there's a lot of nitty gritty stuff we can get into. But I just want to start off by saying I just think as far as just this freshman class, I think Miami feels like this has been a tremendous success as far like just the early feedback, early identifications of some of these guys. I think they feel like this class is very deep and potentially special. A couple names I want to highlight, David.
Yeah.
Gavin Weller is someone I don't know if you're getting similar feedback,
Yeah.
David, but
Yep.
I'm hearing that he is having a tremendous offseason. Miami's
Hmm.
super excited about him. He's already 6'6", pushing 260 pounds, so he has a college ready frame. He has done awesome things in some player-led workouts that has some people turning their heads as what he could do as a pass catcher when the ball's in the air, and that's making people excited. And I think the feeling I get on him is if he obviously has to prove this in spring ball, but if
Hmm.
he could kind of hang on the line of scrimmage, I would not be surprised if he's an ultra early contributor on offense for Miami. So they feel really good about Gavin Weller. They feel great about really all three of the receivers that they signed. Milan Paris gets a ton of buzz. Samarian Wingo. I'm getting a ton of really good Vance Spafford feedback too. Looks fast. I mean, remember, this is a kid that ran like what it was like a 4.36
Hmm.
heading into his junior year. Like I was like, does he look that fast? Like, do you feel like he still has that gear? And they definitely feel like he does. So that's been encouraging. They feel really good about Ben Cogden, the offensive lineman Jackson Cantwell, Reese Woodrow's another freshman offensive lineman. David,
Hmm.
I'm actually getting good feedback on. I think they feel good in general about the defensive line class. J.J. Dunnigan at safety, Camden Portis at nickel are a couple other freshmen they feel good about. And David, I don't know if you've heard anything here, but I got some good feedback on Darian Coleman. For arm
Yeah.
talent wise, and just the way that it's looked. And again, this is all non-contact. I'm
Right.
sure. I don't know
First
exactly how they brought up right
impressions.
first
Yeah.
impressions, just watching him throw the ball and um, have to make decisions, arm talent, arm twitch,
Release. I
processing,
know
right,
his
all that
release is
stuff.
really impressive,
They feel
which
like
we
it's
know.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. They feel like it's as good as anyone's on the team, and they feel
hmm
like his arm talent, just a pure arm talent, is really elite, and they love what he is mentally and how he carries himself and goes about his work. Of course, everyone understands that the frame is
yeah.
probably one of the biggest things that needs to come around, and look, he might not ever really be that big, even just the way he's it's just the way he's built. But I think they are encouraged about what they've seen. And then returners, I mean, a couple guys just to fire off.
Yeah.
Marquise Lightfoot, getting
Yep.
awesome feedback on Marquise Lightfoot. He's
Yep.
someone that I think they feel really good about right now, the way he's handling his business. The quote I got is he's a man on a mission right now, and so they think he potentially play his way into the NFL draft if this all kind of continues to come together. And then just in general, David, I think we talked about last year's team as just deeper and more well-rounded than the 2024 team, which was probably more top-heavy. Last year's
Yeah.
team was really deep and well-rounded. I feel like what the feedback I'm getting, they feel like this team might just be, I don't know, again, there's a lot of talent that they're losing, but they still feel like this team is very talented and maybe even deeper than the team that they had this past season. So that's
In
just some
spots,
feedback.
yeah.
Yeah, that's some of the early feedback I've got. Again, there's a lot of time, and we'll see. But
Right.
I think what's encouraging is that they feel like this is still a very, very good roster, and
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of confidence in what this team has the potential to be.
So yeah, and I would add to like I a lot of those names you dropped, yes, I'm hearing good things on them too. I would say like Darian Mensah is a guy who they're very excited about just
Right.
from what they've seen as well, right? They feel like he's the guy that they expected him to be when they brought him in. So that's a good thing always. You mentioned JJ Dunnigan, but I get a lot of really, really strong buzz with JJ Dunnigan. And again,
Yeah.
it's going to be like to me it'll be interesting like where does he line up in
Hmm.
terms of safety or nickel and how does he do with the speed of the game when spring practice starts, but raw ability, I think there's a lot of potential there with JJ Dunnigan. You mentioned Gavin, he's a name as well that I was getting a lot of strong buzz on too. So um, and yeah, I think in general, there's a feeling that this newcomer class, when you include like transfers and high school recruits that have joined the program for this spring semester, it's the best that they've had since the Mario Cristobal era began. So they feel like like you said, they've lost talent, right? Lost a lot of talent from that 2025 team, but they've infused a lot of talent as well that they are very excited about with this team. So spring football is going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch the cream rise to the top, and I think there's some opportunities for newcomers to earn significant roles. But yeah, go check out Gabby's rundown too on InsideTheU.com. It's good stuff. Zach Lab asks, trying to get a sense on the NFL talent on next year's roster. Miami had 10 players invited to the NFL Combine this year. Where would you put it over under 9.5 players
Oof.
invited to the Combine for 2027? So I think
Oof.
that's a good line.
Yeah, that is a good line.
10 is a lot. 10 is
Ten
hard to
is a
do.
lot.
Um, if I ran through it, right? Like Mensa has 2 years left.
Yeah.
I think if Mensa balls out like we think he will, he's probably going to go to the NFL draft.
Hmm.
I would include Mensa,
Yep.
Barkate,
Yep.
Mark Fletcher.
Yep. McCoy.
I think McCoy and Sampson, I
Yep.
think they both could get invites.
I think they could both be invite guys for sure.
So that's five on
Right.
offense. I don't know if I'm missing anyone on offense. I mean, there's like, to me, like a Jacobs has to show a little more, a Cam
Right.
Vaughn has to show a little
Yep.
more, but it's there. I mean, potential. Um, Defense, Damon Wilson, Ahmad Moten.
Yep.
Uh,
Justin Scott maybe.
I think Justin Scott maybe. I think Marquise Lightfoot
Lightfoot
maybe.
maybe. Yep.
I think one of the corners maybe, even though those guys really they all kind of have two
Yeah, they
years
have
left.
2 years left. But if one of those guys balls out, they could definitely Zachariah Poyser. I think he
Poiser,
has 2 more years
he
too, right? But
does.
he could
Right. So
he
there's
could
potentially at least 10 there. But
right.
I think it's hard. You need it all to come together, kind of like how it did for this
Right.
2025 team. It all came together. They all played well, balled out together, performed on the field. I'll take the over just to be optimistic, but I think it's going to be close. The larger point to me is, Gabby, like, yes, this team's going to be loaded with probably 8 to 12 combine invitees. But man, when you look at that next layer of the roster
Hmm.
where, those third year guys, the third year guys in 2027, there's a lot of talent there too
Oof.
that's going to be pushing. So,
Yeah. I just think that like the standard now is kind of like is Miami going to get to that double digit threshold of combine? Like
Yeah,
you're finally there. David, I mean, how many years ago was it where Miami's pro day was just an absolute like it
yeah,
was like a ghost town. And this was early on in the Mario Cristobal era. And now we're talking about like between Cam Ward and the show that was what this pro day is going to be like.
yeah.
We've kind of seen it right before our eyes. Like the NFL talent that's on this roster has just hit a totally different tier, and it seems like it's on track to stay, to maintain, to sustain that level for years and years to come. So whether it's over or under, like whatever, it's just like they're going to be in that ballpark consistently from this point forward, and I think that's why there's so many reasons to be optimistic about where this program is right now.
There's big time talent too. Like this time last year, like I don't think anyone would have like I think we all liked Akeem Mesidor, right? But I don't
Hmm.
think anyone would have projected him as a first round pick. I don't think anyone would have projected Keontae Scott as like a draft pick,
Hmm.
honestly. Like
Right.
he was probably a UDFA this time last year. He's now a top 50 player. Jacoby Thomas was not going to get drafted. He's now like pushing to be a day 2 pick. He's probably a high day 3 pick. So, there's going to be guys emerging and guys that improve their stock too over the next year. Next question comes from Paul Erickson. First question he asked Gabby, he wants you to elaborate on your over under spring commitment line
Ooh.
of 3.5. So take us through that. You predicted or you
Yeah.
okay? Take
So
us through that.
he asked a question on the board, just over under. Are you taking 3.5 commitments? If I remember correctly, I think he said it until like between now and I think it was like March 1st to May.
Oh, okay.
I think it
So
was like
through the
May.
spring
So
game,
yeah, through
yeah.
the spring, just like basically throughout spring and even maybe even beyond that. Basically before official visits, I think is a fair
Okay.
way to kind of categorize it. And yeah, I took over 3.5 just because I feel like Miami could definitely pile up some spring commitments. And
Yeah.
I think it's with the caveat, and we talked about this on the side a little bit. Just like Miami kind of intends to take a smaller class. They took 30 this past cycle. I don't think they're going to get close to 30 this cycle. So they obviously have 4 guys committed already. We're basically saying, can Miami get to, 8 by the
Right.
time they kind of got into official visits? I do think so. You got guys like Nick Lanier, Sherrard Gordine is someone I could see jumping on board and getting into the class. I mean, there's just a bunch of local guys, national guys that if they decided to push between now and then, I don't know exactly who the names are going to be right now, but if I were projecting that far in advance, I think that. That's something they can figure out. Quarterback, right? I think they could potentially have their quarterback before they go into official visits. I think that would be the ideal situation is having a quarterback locked in. So to me, I think 3.5, taking the over on that is just
It
to me
seems
kind of felt like a layup.
like historically just Mario Cristobal, the way it's been covering his program, it seems like around the spring game, like the week of and the week after the spring game, they usually get like 3 or so
Hmm.
commitments around the spring
Right.
game alone. So
Hmm.
I think it's safe to assume the over. We'll hit
Yeah.
on that. He also asks, he wants an over under on three and
Loves Paul loves him some over unders.
over under of 3.5 interceptions
Ooh.
from just the cornerback room. So last year, like if you count Keontae Scott as a nickel safety, which is
Yeah.
how they structure
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
defense, just the corners, it was only Xavier Lucas who had 1 pick on the year. Do you feel like Miami's going to hit the over on that?
Oof, that's a big over. So that's a part of our offseason conversation, right? Just like the playmaking
Yeah,
ability of the cornerbacks. So would have to take a next step. There's so
I
much
think
talent
it
in that
will.
room.
Like how
Yeah.
many drops?
Yeah, so many,
Like,
too many, too many
yeah,
drops. So the opportunities are there. It's just converting those
yeah.
opportunities into, actual, again, big momentum swinging plays. So I'll take the over to be optimistic. And just because it's not like we didn't see the opportunities,
Yeah,
there were.
the
They
Ole
just
Miss
got to
game,
right
like
alone.
Ethan O'Connor. Yeah, I mean, and Ethan O'Connor has good hands. Like he's
Yeah,
a former wide receiver in high school.
yeah.
I feel
And he had like
like
4 picks at I think he had 4 picks
yes,
at
he did.
Washington State the year
Yep.
before.
And I feel like OJ Frederique does a good job of like jumping routes and getting his hands on balls. He's just got to improve finishing on those plays,
Yep.
making them pay. And I think he will. He works hard at it. So I would take the over. I think it was kind of fluky that they only had one pick. But,
Yeah.
in terms of like off-season conversations, I think it's a good conversation to have to kind of get that group motivated a little bit. Sam Wright asks, David and Gabby, who are your must get slash favorite non five-star recruits
Ooh.
this cycle that Miami is recruiting? You can limit it to 5 names.
Okay. Limit it to 5 names. So non-5-star recruits.
You want me to name some? Give
Yeah,
you some
rips
time to
them off.
think.
Yeah. I have to. I
So,
have to go find some.
so I'll go like, quarterback's a big deal, right? So I
Yep.
feel like you got to pick a quarterback.
Yep.
Of the guys that they seem to be like in the mix with, I like Will Menkel.
Yeah. Menzel. I think it's
Menzel.
Menzel. I'm not sure if exactly what it is.
He's out of Arizona, Chandler,
Yep.
Arizona. I like his tape a lot. I think he's going to be a good college quarterback. So he's the one I would pick at quarterback. I've heard that Braden Parks, the
Yeah.
defensive tackle out of the Chicago area, is a player that Miami really covets. He's
Yep.
like ranked around that top, like ranked around the hundreds or
Yeah.
so.
120-ish range.
So I think internally Miami views him as better than that, and so
Yeah.
I think he's an important recruit for Miami in that regard. We talked about Myson Johnson Cook, the running back out of East St. Louis. Um, I also like, I don't know how realistic this is, Gabby. You would know more than me, but I like the tape of Juju Johnson out of Long
Yeah.
Beach Poly. He's kind of like your 5'11", but in your face physical cornerback. So he's out of Southern Cal. And then Andre Hippolyte, kind of a lengthy local
Yeah.
DB. So those would be my 5, but there's a lot more. But those would be the 5 I do like, just watching tape and you know being somewhat aware of who they like.
Yeah, all those names are good. I'm gonna drop another Chicago area defensive lineman that I've gotten some good feedback on, and that's the David Folorunshu, 6'4", 280 pounds. Got a huge bump for 24/7 Sports. I think he was outside of a 3-star outside of the top 247. Now he's inside the top 80. He's a good one. Again, Miami's really invested in that. I think that recruitment too. Both those Chicago defensive linemen. There's another one too that has a name that's difficult to pronounce, but there's 3 defensive linemen in Chicago that Miami's really, really invested in. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to kind of get back into the Windy City and win a couple big recruitments like they did with Justin Scott and Marquise Lightfoot. Another one, Jatori Williams, the big interior lineman out of Phoenix City Central. That's where Dalen Upshaw went to high school. So he's like
Hmm.
another top 247 guy. He's a big interior lineman that Miami loves. I mean, he's
Hmm.
one of the top. He's probably one of the
Big
top
time
offensive
program.
line. Yeah, big time program, and he's a big time line of scrimmage guy in SEC country. I don't think Miami's going to take a very big. Um, I don't think Miami's going to take a very big wide offensive line class after taking so many
Yeah,
this past cycle. But I think Jatori
quality.
Williams is on like is on the top end of that wish list as far as guys that they do want to take. Not really a Miami guy right now, David. I don't know if it'll change down the line, but I'm a big fan of the Jamarian Simmons kid. He's out of Tallahassee Godby. Just
Hmm.
watching him in these camp settings, like in the camp setting that I saw him in, I think that there's something there. Like to me, just if you look at a lot of these like in-state wide receivers, kind of like the slotty type of guys, like I think Jamarian Simmons has some serious juice. I just love the way he plays. I love the way he runs routes. He's kind of got like long extremities. He's not the biggest guy, but he's not super small either. But to me, he has some twitch. He has some smooth route running ability, and then he just knows how to get past and beat defenders. So he's another guy that I would bring to the table. And then some of the under the radar type of guys locally, Andre Hippolyte is a great drop. They love this kid. You know, he's a 3-star with an 88 rating. Miami thinks that he's exceptional. Like they love him a lot. And then
Hmm.
Sherrod Gordine is another guy I get a lot of
Hmm.
really great feedback on. Again, he's not the biggest guy. He's a local, probably nickel projection, and not to drop like obvious comps or anything like that, or stretch comps, but like I've gotten some like D'Angelo Pons mold type of guys. They feel like the previous staff let D'Angelo Pons get away. And I think they don't want to make that mistake twice. They feel like Sherrod Gourdin's in that mold.
All right. J1711 asks, given that college football has taken on an NFL model, we hear a lot about prove it years or contract years in the NFL, highlighting a player's need to demonstrate health, consistency, or that they are worth their current contracts. What three players would you say are entering spring with the most to prove? So, like for me, like I'm not saying this in relation to contracts or anything like that, but for me, like just, off the top, like the three players that instantly popped in my head, Gabby, in terms of, okay, they need to go prove it this spring. Um, they're all on offense, so I don't know. But first guy that popped in my head was Jordan Lyle, right?
Yeah.
Because he finished camp last year as RB1, started the Notre Dame game. Some minor injuries derailed things a little bit, and then he just couldn't get quite back on track. Very talented player, has an opportunity to, go earn a role this year, get a fresh start with a new position coach, which I think is huge for him too.
Yeah.
So Jordan Lyles one. I also put Josh Moore in that category. Josh Moore, second year receiver, freak physical talent. Miami brought in three outside receiver transfers in the portal this offseason. And so it's just like a cream rise to the top situation. I think Josh Moore is good enough to be a starting wide receiver for Miami this year, but he's going to have to go take it. So that starts this spring. And then the third one for me, Gabby, was Elijah Lofton. I just
Hmm.
think, Miami's got some more prototypical body types behind him that are talented, physically gifted players. And, if we're being real, like Elijah Lofton didn't really produce last year to the level that's expected at the University of Miami at tight end. So to me, he's got to pick it up, be a more consistent player. He shows it in flashes, but you got to be more consistent, more impactful. The standard's high at tight end at Miami, and Elijah Lofton needs to show he can be closer to that standard. So my three guys were all on offense. Those are the
Yeah.
three that hit me.
Yeah, I'll bite on the kind of the NFL contract, big need
Okay.
to have a big year type of. I'll take it. I'll take that angle, and I think Damon Wilson is someone that comes to mind as far as just like he's a
Yeah.
guy that I think came to Miami. Well, first of all, he had a breakout year at Missouri after being a five-star out of Georgia, entering year four at the college level. So was not a three and out type of guy like Ruben Bain was, or some of the other guys in his class were like Keldrick Falk or another. It's another guy that's projected to be a first-round pick. Damon Wilson's coming to Miami to prove that he can be a complete defensive end. He's got to improve as far as just like the I don't know how do I want to say this? Like just like the physicality, just like the physicality he brings, like just in the run game.
He's got to
As
be
far as
better against the run.
right, he's got to be more than just a pass rusher. He's got to be
Yeah.
more than just a premier pass rusher. He's got to show that he can be the total package. So I think from like a contract year, gotta have it type of year, I think Damon Wilson's coming to Miami in that mindset of just like got to get better. Jason Taylor's the guy I want to help get me there. So I think that that is someone that comes to mind from that perspective. I think Xavier Lucas is another one too. Not long ago, he was the number one ranked transfer cornerback in the country when he came to Miami and he left Wisconsin after 1 year with the Badgers. I still think he has NFL upside and all the tools and the traits, and I think that this is the year that he was good last year. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
He wasn't good enough, but I think that he has potential to kind of hit a next gear
He
in
has
his
more.
development.
Yep.
Yeah, he has more in the tank, and I think I'm interested to see if it all kind of comes together here in year three, and he has potential three and out
He does.
capability if it all comes together for him this year. So I would put him in that category. And then just based on what I'm hearing and the way he's approaching the offseason, like I'm curious if Marquise Lightfoot is in that mentality of wanting to be a three and out. Like
Yeah.
this needs to be my like this is kind of like my money year. And I think people feel like the way he's approaching this offseason is really strong. And look, these guys come here as young players and they have to kind of figure out the college game. And Marquise Lightfoot, I think, has come a long way since he's arrived at Miami. And it feels like now he's approaching he's operating like a pro. And I think that that's a big deal. So from that perspective, I think all the names you rattled off are good from like the context of obviously from a Miami perspective, but from the contract year, gotta have it. Those are three names on defense that come to mind.
Sam Wright asks or says, wants us to pick one surprise starter
Ooh,
on offense and defense exiting spring ball.
surprising starter.
Yeah, it's hard
Okay.
to say surprise. I don't know. Like to me, the people that listen to this podcast, they're like diehards, and so it's like, is it going to surprise the people that listen to these names? I don't know. But where would you go with this?
On offense, I'm gonna go Max Buchanan
That's who I would go with
on
too.
the interior offensive line.
And defense, who would you go with?
Defense, yeah, that's a tougher one for me. Yeah, I don't really know who would be a surprise
I'll
on the
go.
defense. Like,
I'll go Dunnigan. I just think.
yeah, that
I
would be a
think.
surprise.
I think the potential. I don't know. I think he can be a nickel corner right away. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, that would probably be a surprise. Or I'm trying to think about like who would win like the weak side linebacker job, like if that would be some sort of surprise, like Kellen Wiley maybe, but I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Uh,
Yeah, like I'm not really sure who to categorize as like a true surprise.
yeah,
Maybe like Hayden Lowe, if Hayden Lowe wins one of like the
yeah,
defensive end jobs.
yeah. That's a good one, Hayden Lowe.
Yeah,
But talent wise, it wouldn't be surprising.
right. It
Like,
wouldn't be surprised. He'd be pretty on track.
yeah. Ballhead 52 says, seems like running back is a priority this cycle based on the current target list. Can you rank the running back based on who the staff is currently prioritizing? I believe a combination of Ty Keys and Myson Johnson Cook would be an elite haul.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still sorting through the like all these boards, and I think Fabian Upshaw
Yeah,
might have his say in the way that this ultimately plays out. But I think that there are, of course, a lot of guys who are under consideration. I mean, Elijah Kimball's definitely someone that they like. Ty Keys is definitely someone that they like. Tyson Robinson, David Segara is another one that they like. Myson Johnson Cook, of course. I think they're showing you with their actions that Myson Johnson Cook is a priority because
yeah,
they're getting him here this week. He's coming again next week, and then he has that official visit locked in. So I think Myson Johnson Cook is definitely someone that, Miami fans are going to want to monitor and kind of keep an eye on throughout this process. So look, I still think it's pretty, I mean, none of these guys are committing tomorrow or anything like that, but I think all those names are worth kind of keeping track of at this point.
Raj Kane wants to talk backup quarterbacks.
Oof, let's
Uh,
go.
will this spring give us any idea if the 2027 quarterback is on the roster already, or do you think Mario will go big game hunting for QBs in the portal? What do you think it will take for Mario to feel comfortable going into a season going into a season without a proven quarterback? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is like I'm here for the conversation. Um, I just think in general, like, doesn't every Power Four program in the country now kind of do the transfer portal quarterback thing? And I understand, like, we get attached to these high school signee recruits at quarterback. But if you are the head coach of a major program, you got to do the best thing for your program and you go with a known commodity, right? And like to me, like here's what fans and even like media members need to understand about like trying to evaluate backup quarterbacks in college football. Backup quarterbacks rarely go against the first team defense. If they move the ball against the second team defense or the third team defense, yeah, that's great. Like that's a good sign, but it really doesn't apply or tell you anything in terms of like, can this guy be a starter? Especially if you're talking about like, okay, the third team quarterback marched the ball down the field against the third team defense. Like the drop off between the first team defense and second team defense in college football is significant. The drop off to the third team defense is like an insane difference, right? Um, Now, if the backup gets a taste of like going, playing with the first team offense and going against the first team defense and they actually move the ball, again, maybe you have something. But rarely that happens. And, rarely it happens in terms of like the backup coming in and moving the ball against the first team defense. To me, like Gabby, like it's at the end of the day, it's all pretty cut and dry. Like if you have to squint and convince yourself, like, yeah, this guy that we got out of high school, he's got a chance. Like, he could do it if this, and this happens and it all comes together. Then it's like, to me, it's like pretty obvious. Like, he's probably not the guy. He's probably not going to be the guy that is now at this high standard of, high level quarterback play. Cam Ward, Carson Beck, now Darian Mensah. Um, And again, I don't think this is just a Miami thing. I think this is a college football thing. So I think Miami's doing what everyone else in college football does. And in general, like I think the fan base kind of gets too sensitive about the backup quarterbacks. Like if one is good enough, it will be pretty clear and obvious. If one isn't good enough and isn't the standard, then the portal should be embraced. And right now, Miami's on an unreal run of transfer quarterbacks. And to me, there's no sense in like not continuing to go to that well. So, I mean, I've made it clear my stance on that. Like, I'm team transfer portal quarterback guy. Um, but like, if you do, and also too, like Gabby, like I don't know if you agree on this, but like in general, man, like yeah, if you want to go with the high school quarterback route, you got to invest in that. And I think Miami, rightfully so, is choosing not to do that. Would you agree with that? So
No,
like,
they're definitely not playing like the premium high school quarterback
right,
game right now.
right. So those are my thoughts on it. And look, that's not to say like Luke Nickel and Darian Coleman or Jude Anderson can't put it all together in the future and be a starter somewhere else. But like, you know, and I'm here for the backup quarterback conversation because it's fun. But like, if we're gonna talk about like, oh, are these guys gonna be the starters? Like, to me, it's kind of like, we'll see, but like, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be obvious, is I guess the way to answer this question. Like, if it would have to be extremely obvious to everyone that like this guy's obviously a stud, and like Luke Nickel or Darian Coleman to like make it would have to be a no-brainer, I think, for Miami to actually go that route. Which and look, I do think Miami's invested in these guys' development. Like I think Miami
Yeah,
wants Luke Nickel to be good enough to be their starting quarterback. I think Miami
sure.
wants Darian Coleman to be good enough to be their starting quarterback. That's way easier and way less of a headache and truthfully way less expensive if
Yeah,
that works out that way. So I think best case, or I don't know if it's best case scenario, but it would be a lot simpler. But it would have to be to me like what you're saying. This guy gets opportunities against this first team defense that we know this defense is nasty, and it's just like whoa, like there's just something here, and
yeah, he
can't
moves the
deny. No
ball.
one in the program could deny it, and it's like this kid is ready to start a football game. So I think until it's that blatantly cut and dry, obvious, black and white, like I think with the track record that these guys have pieced together with their ability to go get transfer quarterbacks, premium top arms, top shelf arms in this college football landscape, like that is the clearest that's the clearest path to success, which we've seen how it's transformed the program, getting two premium college, proven quarterbacks in the transfer portal. It's probably going to pay off in a big way this year too. So
Yeah,
the easiest way you're gonna know you're gonna win is when you just go get a top tier transfer quarterback. So it's to me if it's not like and plainly like just obvious, then I mean it's just tough to.
to me, you should always maximize that position. And okay, let's say Miami was unable to get Darian Mensah, right? Then they would have just rolled with Emory Williams. So, like, what was the harm in chasing transfer quarterbacks? There was no harm.
Yeah.
You swung high, you swung big, you landed a big time quarterback. If you didn't get him, then you would have been rolling with what you got. And you know, I just don't think that should be I don't think that should be the plan of like, okay, we're just going to roll with what we got.
Yeah.
You should always aspire to bring every position, aspire to bring in
Yeah.
NFL talent. Um, this kind of rolls into this question, but Brandon 2020, shoot your shot and call who you think QB2, whether it will be, whether it's Coleman or Nickel. And whomever QB2 do you think is going to be the, season as, I guess a starter next season? So for me, this isn't just a straight up answer, but like if I'm predicting QB2, I'm predicting Luke Nickel. If I'm predicting long term, I am more of a Darian Coleman guy. Um, you listen to this podcast, you know the type of quarterback I prefer. And Coleman is more my type in terms of the traits he has. Now, does that mean I'm convinced Darian Coleman is a future starter at Miami? No. Like, he needs time. He's got to show more. But he does have more of the traits that I like compared to Luke Nickel. So that's how I would describe it. I want my backups in general. Like, this is how I would do it if I'm Miami. I would go for high ceiling, not the most expensive high school quarterbacks, but guys that have traits and high ceilings potentially if it all comes together. And then I would just play the portal game. And you hope in the background you have these high school quarterbacks developing and maybe one of them hits. But at the same time, you're always bringing in these transfer starters until one of those guys hits. I don't like the high floor quarterback to me is like
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe more of like what Luke Nickel is, right? Luke Nickel's probably just like
Yeah.
more of like the high floor quarterback, and Darian Coleman probably presents more of that high ceiling. And if it all comes together, um, you know, I'm I'm coming again. My biggest question with Darian has always just been the frame. And again,
Yeah.
sorry to answer the question. If I'm projecting who QB2 is going to be this year, I would project Luke Nickel to be
Hmm.
QB2. But I'm more optimistic about Darian Coleman just hearing some of the early feedback I'm getting. But we still have a lot we need to learn about both these guys.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to say like, this guy's going to be the quarterback. Like either one of these two guys are going to be the quarterback in 2027. Like whether Darian Mensah is for sure going or not. Like it's just too soon to tell. And just knowing the way that
Let's see
they,
how it looks in spring,
right, right.
you
And
know?
then again, just knowing their track record with the transfer portal, which is fine. Like that's not an insult to Luke Nickel and Darian Coleman. That's just the
No.
reality of just what's worked for Miami. They've made it a transfer portal destination, a quarterback destination for transfers, and it's working out.
DM799 asks, will we have a top five class this year?
Ooh.
Should that be a reasonable expectation given the team's performance, NIL position, and Mario's emphasis on recruiting?
For me, I think it's a fair expectation, and look, uh, with the caveat that I
Will
kind of
they
said
have
earlier,
one though?
will they have a top five class? I think they. I think I would say yes today,
Okay.
and the only reason, and I think if I'm projecting, I don't know if I'd go any higher than five. Um, I just think it's going to be in that range just because I think they're going to start getting I think they're going to get some elite tier level guys. And I think that's kind of like the plan and the focus right now is
Yeah.
making sure you got to get some dudes. This class won't be as big as the last one, so you're not going to have like the numbers bump that you might get from signing a bigger class. But I think that the quality in this class is going to be really, really strong. And I
Yeah.
think because of the quality that they're attracting and what they have the potential to acquire, I think that might be enough to kind of push them into that top five category, even if they don't sign 28 plus guys this cycle. So I think that this is going to be a really, really, really good recruiting class. And Miami has I think they're going to maximize what they did and convert that into results. We've seen good recruiting results, but I think they can start hitting that next tier, which they really haven't been in. They signed the one
Yeah.
top
It's
five
hard.
class. It's
Yeah.
tough to crack into that top tier of Ohio State and Georgia, where it's just like
Yep.
jostling for position for the number one to number three class. Like I think Miami could break through into that level of recruiting this cycle. So I'm hopeful that they'll be in that range at least.
For me, like I'm just more interested in like I think it's important to do both high school and portal. And I think it's more important to me to be top 10 in both rather
Yeah,
than, is it focusing on one being a top five.
right.
I think you got to be top 10 in both, which Miami was this offseason. They were what, number nine high school, number four portal,
Yeah.
I believe. So
And I think they finished like number seven overall, number 6 or 7
yeah.
overall.
So you do that over a 3 to 5 year rolling stretch, um, your roster is going to be loaded. But I think you got to do both high school and portal at a high level,
Yeah.
top 10 level. But yeah, top five. I mean, look, for me, like it's just so hard to get up there. So I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just, I got to see it. They've done it once, right? They did it
Once.
the 23 cycle
Yep.
with
When I think they got Mawanoa,
Francis. Yeah,
Sampson. They had two 5 stars that cycle.
right.
So that's what you need the
That's the
five
max.
star.
Yeah.
You need the 5 star hit. So it's like how
And there's
many
some
top
local
32.
fives this cycle.
Yeah, you got
So,
Nick Lanier, you got Mark Matthews. If you get
right,
those two local guys, that's a huge contribution to that total. And
right.
if you can sneak in a few national fives, and which I think is on the table. Like I really do think that's on the table,
Yeah.
especially as you stretch it into that 32 range. And you look at the updated top 247 that released today, like there's a lot of guys in the top 32 right now that Miami is
In the
significantly
mix. Yeah.
in the mix with. So we'll see if they're able to pull. Can they pull 3 or 4 5 stars? I think if they can get 4 or 5
If they
stars,
do, yeah, they're top
yeah,
five.
they're
Yeah.
it's a lot. Like I think they'll be basically a lock for a top
Yeah.
five. So we'll see if they can get there.
20 Years of Suffering asks Mario recently was quoted as saying, the portal is always open. Do you think the roster is really set for 2026, or do you foresee another Xavier Lucas situation post spring? Maybe more than one player and likely with less drama. I mean, look, Miami's very aggressive, right? They're very aggressive in talent acquisition. So I could for sure see a situation where Miami tries to sneak in another player or two. But I mean, look, I think that depends, frankly, on how things look in the spring. So if Miami's happy with how things look in the spring, maybe they don't need to be aggressive like that and push it. Um, so that's how I would characterize that. L.I. Canes 26. Curious your guys' take on the playoff expansion. Would you prefer 16 or 24? Do you feel a Super League is inevitable? If so, give your outline on what you think it might look like for Miami fans. So, to me, like I like 12.
Hmm.
I'm fine with 16. Like I think 16 makes sense. 24 to me is insane. That's too much. But I'd be good with expanding it to 16, I guess. To me, like I think the Super League is probably inevitable. To me, the question with that though is timeline. Like, is that going to
Hmm.
be a 2030 thing, or is that going to be like a 2040 thing,
Hmm.
2036 thing?
Right.
I think that's to be determined. I will say this, like as it relates to like the future for Miami from a league perspective, this settlement that FSU and Clemson got with the ACC, to me, it kind of changes the math and the feelings of like
Right.
needing to rush out of the
Hmm.
ACC because what the settlement did was it allowed for teams in the ACC, if you go on a nice college football playoff run, you get to keep all that money. And presumably, if you're one of those teams, you're also getting a lot of eyeballs on from a TV rating standpoint. And you also get a nice little bonus from the ACC for being that type of team as well. So, all told, I mean, the final numbers aren't out yet, but all told, like Miami's probably going to be from a revenue standpoint from this past 2025 year, they're going to be making as much for that one year as an SEC or Big Ten team. And so they're going to probably be in that like 70 million to 80 million dollar range when everything is dispersed. And again, you don't have to go through those gauntlets of the Big Ten and the SEC, and you get paid just as much. So this settlement really rewards, producing and so production. And so from where Miami is now, where they're at with, they're kind of the top dogs in the ACC right now, and you eat what you kill, that's a big opportunity in college
Yeah.
sports that other conferences don't have. So to me, like if I'm Miami, I'm kind of happy and I'm kind of chilling with where things are at right now with the ACC. As long as I handle my business, I'm gonna be sitting okay as it relates to the revenue. So those are my kind of like thoughts on this topic in general. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, well, I fully agree on the ACC thing. I think what we saw from this college football playoff run, it changed my whole perception of Miami's value or the value of the ACC for Miami specifically.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's so unique that you go on this playoff run and it's just like everyone's expecting and saying, oh, well, they have to share it with the conference. Like, nope, actually they don't.
No.
They're keeping all of this.
Every other conference does.
Right, except
Yeah.
the ACC, which is amazing. Thank you to Florida State and Clemson for that. And Miami I feel like Miami's peaking or like, on the up, like again, becoming a top, not only a top dog in the ACC, but a top program nationally that people are now watching a ton because Miami has that type of national brand and reach. And so I think it all lines up for Miami to be in a healthy situation where they're maximizing the amount of money that they can make from this conference, while still being able to kind of manage and navigate an ACC's type of schedule, which is huge. So yeah, I mean, I feel way better about the ACC as a conference right now than I did probably a year ago. So I don't think there should be any rush to get out of the conference. College football playoff wise, look, I mean, I think 12 is fine, but if we're gonna do this G5s have to get in thing, then I want to push it to 16. And
I think 16's fine.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think six. If we're gonna do like, oh, the G5 has to have a place, like to me, there's no reason why both Tulane and James Madison should have just been like locks to get into the college football playoff. Like, I think if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna start playing
To
that
me,
game,
to me the G5 has to be top 16 in my
yeah,
opinion to get
yeah.
into a 16
Right.
team playoff.
If we're
So,
gonna do the G if we're gonna do an automatic G5 thing, then I think this needs to be 16 teams because that's silly. We wasted two playoff games this year, which is not fun. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying I like relegate the G5 into their own thing and whatever, have them do their own playoff. Like, I don't want to go to like that end of the spectrum, but
no, but that's where things are trending though
yeah, and it's
with
just like
roster management like
it's
G5
just
teams.
it's two different sports.
Yeah.
They're playing two different games. Truthfully, like it's just what it is. And those G5 teams are respectable, and you
They
have to
can't
handle
keep
your
their good
business when you
players
play
though.
them right. Exactly. Those guys are getting plucked every offseason. So those guys
Yeah.
are having to figure it out. And look, to credit to them, some of them find more good players and they develop more good
Yeah.
players, and like that's great for those programs. But to put them on the same field as Oregon and Ole Miss in those situations and send them to on those road environments, like it's not competitive, and there's no reason a playoff game should be that non-competitive. Just from a height,
Right.
weight, speed standpoint, from a talent acquisition standpoint, a roster construction standpoint, yeah, some of those guys get like P4 kickbacks that end up kind of figuring it out, and some P4 body type dudes. But in general, as a whole, like really,
No,
it's
yeah.
not the same game. Like you're not playing with the same with the same like you're not playing at the same level. So for those, that's the reason why I'm pro 16 team playoff. The 24 thing is absurd, and in no situation should that ever be a
Yeah.
case. I pray it never gets to 24 teams. But 16 to me, with the way the sport's trending and the way
Yeah,
all
there's
this
enough
stuff is
talent
happening,
for
yeah, I think
16.
16 is fine. And I think Miami kind of just
Yeah,
Miami's run as like the last team in to go as far as it did.
correct.
I think it kind of opened up the box to be like, okay, like some of these teams on the back end of that top 12 are still really talented, and if you get them into these playoffs and they get hot, these teams could still go on a run. Like, who's to say Texas couldn't have gone on a run in the playoff if they got
Right.
hot and were playing well, whatever the case is. So I think 16 in this landscape is probably the sweet spot for me.
All right, two more questions and we're out of here. GAHS for Canes has a few questions, handful of questions here. So let's just go quick hitter, one word answers for the most part. We can expand on the later ones, but he wants to know who will be the highest impact true freshman. Who would you go with? I'll go
I'm
Cantwell.
yeah. I'll go JJ Dunnigan on the back end.
Which side of the ball will be more dominant?
Ooh. I'm gonna go offense.
Offense. What season and record would you consider a success or failure?
Ooh, success would be 12-0. Failure would be honestly like anything 10 or below.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got to win 10 plus. To me, like success is win the ACC. It's
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I think success too, like, to me, like the way thing is like get in the CFP, try to get hot, right? So
Yeah.
like to me, it's like get in the CFP and win one of those CFP games, wherever it
hmm
is. That's a successful year. And
Yep.
then more than that, great, awesome. Failure, just not getting to the CFP is a
hmm
failure, whatever
Right.
that means.
I think not getting
Um,
to ACC championship game would be a failure, honestly. Not that it matters. I know it matters
yeah,
less,
that's the
but
thing.
I
Like we
still think
learned
that
it
would be a
doesn't
failure.
matter,
It doesn't
but
matter, but I still think that like just with the schedule, I still think that would be a failure
yes,
for the program. Honestly,
100%.
I wouldn't care that much. I would care way more about not making the CFP, but I still think with this team and this schedule, if you don't make it to the ACC championship game, I'm just like, come on, man. What
Yeah,
are we doing?
this is the year to do it.
Yeah, Notre Dame doesn't count against your ACC schedule. So like, if you don't get in like this year, like there's like just got to do that.
Which current player do you view as the likeliest to go highest in the 2027 draft on each side of the ball? So offense,
Offense, probably Darian Mensah.
same. Defense,
Defense, Damon Wilson.
same. Which game this season intrigues you the most outside of Notre Dame?
Ooh, I think Virginia Tech. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but Virginia
Yeah,
Tech in late in the
November.
season,
Yeah.
to me is the one.
I'll go at Clemson on October 3rd
Yeah,
just cuz like it's an opportunity to kind of deliver a death blow, I feel
yeah,
like, and
yeah. Well, it's still a big
they're
game. I mean, that's still a
dangerous.
big
Yeah,
brand. It's still a big brand, and
right.
still a big deal to go to Clemson and win. So,
And then this one's kind of more of like a conversation, but like, what would be your dream playoff route scenario? Bye week or home game, plus potential matchups you'd like to see or storylines on your
ooh.
way to Vegas. So, like, I'm always give me the bye. I
Yep,
know like the records, coincidentally, in my opinion, don't support
yeah,
like a bye week being good in this CFP, but to me, there's just not enough data to really like back that. And like to me, in a game of physicality, like hockey, like football, you always want the rest if you can get it, if you've earned it. So I would take the bye. I think the quarterfinal, you're looking at like I don't want to travel, ideally. So
hmm
you're looking at the Peach, right? If you're Miami, that would be the closest quarter. Then the Orange in the semis. The semis are fairly close to Miami, so it's Orange or Sugar.
sugar.
Yeah. So not too far either one. Obviously Orange is super close. And then the Vegas Natty. Like to me, in terms of like fun matchups to see, the ones I would list, Gabby, would be like Oregon. I think
Yep,
that'd be a fun one just from the Mario Cristobal
yep,
standpoint. LSU, I think, would be a
yep.
fun one from a
Be
Mario
really fun.
Cristobal, Lane Kiffin
Yeah,
standpoint.
definitely.
Have them on the podium together.
Yeah.
Georgia, after the Kirby Mario
Oh yeah, no,
bars,
that's awesome.
that'd be
Yeah, for
fun.
sure. Yep.
Maybe they break out into another stand-up routine if
Oh
they
yeah.
are
How
playing
would
it.
that joint press conference be?
And
That would be
then
quite something.
I think USC would be fun too,
That's the one
right?
I was gonna
Like
say is USC.
they haven't played each other since the 1960s
Yeah,
and,
that would be fun.
East Coast, West Coast. So
hmm
I think those would be fun, but lots of these matchups in the CFP. Like Miami's CFP run this year was, to me, a
Super
lot of
fun.
fun matchups.
So
So
much fun. That was so cool. Ohio State's always fun too, like a rematch with Ohio
yes,
State or Notre Dame rematch in the
yes.
CFP would be a good one. That rivalry is fully renewed, so that's fun.
Last question, couple of non-football questions, so we'll get out of here quick. But S short 33, what seeding do you expect the basketball team to get? How deep of a run does this team make? Look, I don't know. Like I'll say like 7 seed. To me, they look like a 7 or 8
hmm
or 9 type of seed. Um, and just my big takeaway with the basketball team, like I'm very impressed by Jay Lucas.
Yes.
First year as a head coach, doing what he's doing. Very impressive, producing this level of team. Um, Fun team to watch. They battle, they play hard, scratch and claw. in some ways that their identity is similar to the football team this past year, where they're hard to beat. Like they fight you all game long. So to me, I would say seven-ish, eight-ish seed. I don't know. Where are you at with them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know I'm not super familiar with when you start getting to that mid-tier
They
of
look like a
seeding.
tournament team, though,
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
definitely
Like,
look, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They definitely look like a team that belongs in the tournament. And hey, man, if you can sneak out a game there, like that's always fun. Like, I think
yeah,
they can win what, seven plays nine or something. What is
seven plays 10, eight
seven plays
plays
like
9.
yeah, like you could win I mean
Win one of
if you
those,
get to
that's
if you could
awesome.
right,
Yeah.
just like the Miami like the football stuff, like win a playoff game, win a tournament game, like
Honestly,
to me that's a super successful season.
I think they're a team you don't want to see in the tournament,
Oh, no
honestly,
one's gonna want
because
to play them.
they
I'm curious
are,
about the ACC tournament too, like how they're gonna look
yeah,
there. Like they might get the double bye, right? Like they're
yeah,
one of the top seeds in the ACC
correct.
tournament. Like it's a huge deal.
Yep,
And I mean, again, Jay Lucas is doing an exceptional job. I think they're one win away from tying the program record for most wins
yep.
in a regular season. Like it's a massive accomplishment. But no one's beating Duke this year, man. That team looks
They're loaded.
absolutely
Yeah,
insane.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
gonna be an easy just put Duke in the final and make them champions, and I'll fill in the rest of my bracket from there.
And then the other question, has your opinion on the baseball team changed after the sweep against Florida? So you're more of a baseball guy than me, but like in
Yeah.
general, Gabby, like no, like to me, baseball's a long season,
Yep.
still a long way to go. Yes, Florida's a different level. Yes, Florida owns Miami. It's
Yes.
annoying. Um, but like Miami just needs to focus on you got to win your midweek games, find a
Yep.
way. Like those are tricky, but you got to find a way to win them and win the majority of the ACC series remaining. Need the bats to come alive,
Yep.
come back around. They kind of went silent against Florida, and I think they will. But no, it doesn't change how I
Yeah.
feel. I still feel like this Miami team can be fun and
Yeah.
make a postseason run.
Yeah, it's a fun team. I've actually been pretty locked in just because I've been really excited about like this lineup that they put together
Yeah,
is really impressive. And these guys, I mean, look, that the kid that was pitching for Florida to open the game, I
yeah,
think Friday night was that kid looks like
he's
he looked
different.
like an MLB pitcher. Like he was.
Yeah.
Florida is just a really good program, and that's a really good Florida team too. And so. But look, Miami has an impressive lineup. I think all those guys can hit. They have impressive young players, and I think the pitchers are good enough to be competitive in the ACC. So like I don't think so. I'm still really excited about this team. I'm going to keep watching, mostly from my TV because it's tough to get out there. But I would love to. I'm going to enjoy tracking this team and following this
Yeah.
team. I think that they have a good crop of talent, and I'm optimistic about the future of the program. I'm curious to see how it all comes together. They got to win the games they're supposed to win, like you're saying. Win those midweek
Right.
games, and you're going to run into some tight teams, some tight matchups in the ACC. If you win those, I still think that this is a a tournament type of team, like a
Yes, I
team
agree.
that can compete and play in the postseason this year.
Yes. So we'll get out of here on that note. Appreciate everyone for listening. Fun mailbag podcast. We'll get things cranked up here as spring football's right around the corner. It'll be a fun time to follow Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting. So appreciate everyone for listening. And until next time, take care.